over the last 2 days, we heard a lot about the pain for open source maintainers with all those AI-assisted contributions. And now we're going to learn how to welcome them. Thank you, Raimund, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Roger. Hi, I'm Raimund Hook. I'm from GitLab, in case you hadn't noticed already. My role is DevRel Engineering. We look after the systems, the tools, and the processes around our entire contribution community. Some of you that were here last year may remember last year I spoke about onboarding human contributors into your project and how you can make it easier for contributors to get involved with your project. A lot has changed in the last year. So today I'm talking a little bit more about how to welcome other kinds of contributors. That's my profile. And you can even see in the last couple of months how my contribution graph has started to accelerate. I didn't touch the table. I spend a lot of time talking about stuff, but occasionally I actually do get into some engineering. But even in the last couple of months, my own engineering efforts have been starting to get accelerated with the help of some AI frames. Now, the open source world has split into kind of two camps. Maybe the one is a little bit bigger than the other, but camp one bans AI outright. I'll talk about that in a minute. But there's a number of projects out there that have completely said no AI past this door. Okay, that's one way of doing it. Camp two has said allow them, let them in, but the review process is going to fill up, and we don't really know what to do with it. And as we've already heard from Vadim yesterday, this creates developer and maintenance burdens. And these are both real responses. It's a real problem. Neither of those answers maybe necessarily holds on its own. And of course, there's always nuances with these, but yeah, let's dive in a little bit more. So the bans. In March, a survey was done with a whole number of projects. I think the survey covered about 130 plus projects. 3.6% of those were outright. These projects have different reasons why they don't want AI on them. Zig is just saying, well, we don't have time to deal with these things. NetBSD creates, says, oh, well, it's a licensing sort of black hole for us. So, this is going to be a nightmare for us to figure out where our license sits with us. QEMU has issues saying, well, it's not compatible with the DCO. The jury's out, but and these get a little bit of media coverage when people talk about it, but it's not the mainstream. Okay, the mainstream is disclose that you're using AI with your contributions. It's fine, it's accountable, but be upfront with it. But you still own your contribution, which is correct. I think you at the end of the day, you're the one that's submitting the change. You need to be able to stand by it. You need to be able to support it at the end of the day. Different projects have looked at this differently across time. So the Linux kernel says agents can't actually put the signed off by payline in their Git commits that a human should be putting in. That makes it a DCO compatible change. Instead, they should be using an assisted by tag. That's maybe a good way of doing it. At the same time, Linus has said that bans are pointless posturing. So yeah, maybe again, you be the judge. LLVM has said human in the loop always, but if you're picking up one of those good first issue issues that they're left out there for new contributors, don't bring your AI agent along. Those are really for genuine people who are looking to learn the project and pick up the project. Take your AI contributions to something bigger, something a little bit more meaty, and something that maybe you wouldn't necessarily be able to sort of be learning from. A number of other projects have various other approaches along the way. But going back to that previous sort of survey, 71 of those projects had commits explicitly referencing Claude, Gemini, Cursor, and Codex. So the reality is, like it or not, these commits are coming into your project. So I think I stepped. Yeah, there we go. Curl took a different route. Okay, Curl had a public HackerOne security bounty, and in Daniel's own words, he started getting AI slop. So they took away the bounty, kept the code, still take contributions, but have actually closed down the actual bounty. What that has done, hopefully, is just, again, reduce the maintenance load so that they're not sifting through reams and reams of AI-generated contributions that may or may not have any deep justification in terms of the bounty. So at GitLab, we made a deliberate choice, not just allow contributions, but actively open the door to it. And over the next little while, I'll talk exactly what that means and how we did that, and talking about some of the contribution pathways that we've enabled that explicitly enable AI, and how we're even equipping our contributors with those tools to actually go and make those contributions. So that gives us kind of 4 different positions, but there's one pressure that all of these positions are largely trying to answer, and that is maintainer review time. Our maintainers are precious. Some projects have more of them than others, but at the same time, we still need to be able to cope with the influx of all of these. And how do we figure out how to do all of that and approach the different routes that our contributors are taking? So, as I mentioned, we've got 3 things that we're doing on top of the policy. Now, what are those? So before I dip into those, we have a large engineering team. Maybe not thousands of engineers, but we have several hundred engineers that are actively looking at the GitLab code base and actively working on the GitLab code base. And these are our review pool. This is our review pool. So we're not a small open source project with 2 or 3 maintainers or even 10 or 20 maintainers. We do have a few hundred engineers out there. So we have a little bit of capacity to support additional load. At the same time, our own engineers are using AI themselves. So their own contributions are increasing too. So again, how we are coping with this is not only affecting our community contributions, but it's also affecting our internal contributions. So the first thing we did is equip our contributors with our own tools. So Duo Agent Platform is our big AI toolkit, and we enabled that across our community forks. And so far in May, we've consumed 17,000 of our credits in our community forks by contributors actively working to better their contributions into the GitLab code base. One of our contributors, every month we recognize a notable contributor, used to be called an MVP. The Siemens team have several amongst their ranks. Our latest notable contributor has actively used GitLab Duo to do it. He's a self-identified, I'm not a developer, and yet he's been developing and contributing very solid, very capable merge requests over the last several months, and growing as a contributor and growing in confidence purely due to his use of AI. Specifically in that, you can't really, we don't necessarily measure exactly how much each user is using, but we are trying to also keep an eye on the fact that we don't have users that are just simply gaining access to our tools and not even contributing back. So there is a level that we're trying to make sure that contributors are pushing back to us. The second step we've done is an AI hackathon directly on the platform. We ran a hackathon from February to March. It had something like $65,000 of prize pool. We had a large number of contributors sign up, almost 7,000. From that, they were tasked with actually developing AI agents and AI flows on our platform. We had some really good contributions that came out of that. Again, a large number of credits were contributed or consumed in the process of that. But again, not just welcoming AI contributions, but actually welcoming contributions into our AI space and furthering the platform for all. And then the last move is the on-ramp and how we are powering our users moving forward. Now, some of this stuff is still very much in progress. We haven't completed any of this work by any means, but these are the things we're doing. All of our reviews, especially our community reviews, come in, and our review bot is powered with our own review standards. So straight away, the first reviewer that you will get an AI reviewer, but it understands the way we expect code to look. It understands things that our reviewers are going to be manually checking anyway. So again, that helps our reviewers with the load because at least they know that there's been some level of first pass over the code before someone actually starts to look at it. Our contributor platform is designed to, we're busy building in hooks now so that if you come along with your agent and you say, hey, I want to build this thing in GitLab, it's almost going to route you through the contributor platform to get you signed up, get you access to the community forks. And before it even starts, you've got access to the right tooling and you've got the way that we expect our contributors to be coming through the system. And then the last one, many of our projects already have Agents MD and various other AI breadcrumbs, but we're growing those, we're enhancing those specifically for community contributors. So in many cases, they assume that you are a project member when you're coming along. So you point Claude Code or you point GitLab Duo or your tool of choice at our code. And then it runs off and it tries to do stuff as if it was a GitLab team member. In many cases, that obviously doesn't work because you don't have commit access to the right repository. So we're building in those same rules to say, if you are a community member, if this is a fork of the project, maybe this is a path that you need to go through. So adding all of these different pieces in to the puzzle just also makes that agent-based contribution flow that much more approachable, and it helps people figure out exactly how they want to do things and move. I'm not even moving my feet. One thing I will say also is that I used AI to build all my slides. Obviously, the images themselves, but I had a nice transcript built for my slides last week, and I said to OpenCode, hey, I need some slides. Can you build me some slides? And it did a pretty good job. So yeah. Now, the one thing that we've heard time and time again in the last 2 days is reviewer and maintainer burdens. Right. This is big. This is one of the biggest trade-offs that AI-assisted contributions is going to cause. And there's no real solid answer to that, except equipping your reviewers with the same tools. So making sure that they have access to faster reviews and they can use AI in the review process to speed things up and codify a lot of those same policies. Make sure that the various things that a reviewer would need to check as part of a contribution, make sure those checks are already done. So that the reviewer can actually spend the time looking at the code and actually understand, is the code correct? does the code conform to our project direction, etc., rather than trying to work out, oh, has the developer signed a commit in a specific way or certain things. Make sure all of these policies are available in a codified fashion. Couple of signals worth watching. I'm not going to comment on the specifics of them, but if you know about them or don't, Chardet was a Python library that had somebody used Claude Code to do a supposedly clean room re-implementation of it and released it as version 7. That's apparently doesn't have any like similarity against the original code base, but the original author is claiming otherwise. And Claude Code, which was a Rust re-implementation of the Claude Code harness that went up. It's still up, still hasn't been resolved. So these are things that are interesting and certainly need to be watched. And I think over time, the more AI contributions go out there, the more of these sort of edge cases and legal gray areas you're going to see. But yeah, I think there's also very much a sort of wait and see situation for many of these. I think Roger is going to go and kick the projector. So 3 things to take with you, and these are the things that you can do to make your whole process of accepting and embracing AI contributions just a little bit more easier. And that's 1, equip your contributors with the same tools that you're using. Last year I spoke about onboarding and making sure that the actual toolkits are available. Now we're actually even making sure that the same AI tools are available to our contributors. Permitting AI puts you in the majority. Embracing it and equipping your users with it is the distinction here. Tool review. So maintainer review is the big pressure, right? It's coming out multiple times. Everyone who's talking about AI contributions is talking about maintainer pressure. So give your maintainers tools to lower that burden so that they're not checking the little things that they have to check, and they're more spending the time on making sure that the process is flowing appropriately. And yeah, keep an eye on the gray zones. There are plenty out there. I've sort of highlighted 2. More are going to come. And I think just understanding that some things maybe are gray zones is a good stance, rather than necessarily shutting your doors outright and banning things because you're just scared of what that could be doing. So where does this leave you, right? If you're running an open source project, maintaining an open source project, every project out there already has a de facto position. Okay, that position is already defined. Okay, silence is a position too. So if you don't have anything in your project that currently talks about it, well, you've obviously taken the silent position. So how do you fix that, right? Write down, right? Does your contribution guide say anything about AI-assisted code? If it doesn't, change that, right? Even if you're simply saying no, or if you're changing it to yes, but, or if you're changing it to whatever you need to change it to, having something written, having something explicit is far better than not having anything at all. So who owns it? Who's taking the responsibility when an AI-assisted contribution falls over? Whether that's falling over because it's got to a point, the reviewer has now sort of said, oh, well, you need to make these changes. Who's taking the responsibility for that? If you've got an agent that'll pick up the review comments and go back and rework it or whatever, that's fine. But remember, you own the agent, human in the loop. You're still in control of that code. And again, having that codified in your contribution policies, having that clear, visible, and written out in as many words to your contributors so that they at least know what is expected of them from a contribution point of view. The last one is, if you have an open source project and you haven't yet had a torrent of AI contributions, what would that look like tomorrow? Could you cope? How would you cope? And what would your reviewers do? In many cases, your reviewers might just burn out, or I give up, I can't do it, or your queue piles up, or something. So you need, again, clear policy, clear direction of knowing how you're going to handle this, what you're going to do with it, and where you're going to take it. So to end that off, worry about getting it perfect later. Have it written now. Right? Go and get something. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be something, because a silent policy isn't good for anyone, because nobody really understands what's happening out there. And go and do it before the AI torrent arrives, not after. And yeah, short and sweet, that's all I had today. Thanks. Any questions?
You've mentioned there a bunch of folks that kind of assisted by and then having kind of the model being used. Some folks were complaining this is kind of, let's say, marketing for the model as well, as we have then those brands of those models flooded and all those commits in. So what do you think about that?
It's a good question. I think it comes down to a level of transparency. And yes, maybe it is marketing of that model, but at the same time, it's a very clear signal from the contributor to say, this was done with the help of a tool, so that they're not hiding behind the fact that they had assistance. And again, I firmly believe that being explicit with anything is far better than being implicit or quiet, or just like, okay, well, I can see that you used an LLM in this contribution, but nowhere does it actually say that you did, but I'm just going to make an assumption. Assumptions always get things wrong. At least that way you have a very clear, very straightforward thing. And in fact, I don't even know what our policy says, so I need to actually go back and check on that. So doing research for this talk, I went and found that assisted by is a new tag that is actually used by or actually recommended by some projects. I have seen co-authored by, which is usually a human comment that gets put into a Git signature, but assisted by kind of makes sense. Let's make a new space for AI to live, rather than trying to fit it into what is traditionally a human space.
Yeah, fully agree.
I would like to comment on that. So from my point of view, it's really important to have that line, because otherwise, if someone figures out that the model was actually trained with GPL data, and now the generated code is also under GPL, then you will never be able to figure out which model was actually used and what license actually would have to be applied to that code. So that's, from my point of view, also legally a very important part. Although it's not it doesn't fix it, but it at least gives you an direction.
Exactly, and I think it comes down to that disclosure and that transparency, and everyone playing open cards and not trying to pull off a LLM-assisted contribution as your own, because the agents are still doing it with your user account as you. They're making the commits as you, unless somewhere along the line it's tagging it to say that this was assisted. It's not very obvious. Way back when the first ChatGPT and the first LLMs sort of started coming out to the market, we updated our merge request template to have a checkbox at the top to say this was AI was used during the creation of that merge request. That was the requirement from our legal team. I don't think I've ever seen anyone actually ticking that, including our own teams. So it just goes to show you can put these things in templates, etc. But as soon as you start codifying it, you have that policy written down. If that policy says this needs to be there, then you can also codify your review systems to actually say, hey, this hasn't been in there. Put a message in the merge request, pull request, whatever you want to call your requests. Put a message in there and say, this has been identified in one of the commits as being AI assisted, or this has been identified as not AI assisted. That way, again, it's explicit. Everybody knows that maybe you didn't put the AI assisted in there. You see that, oh, this is supposed to be AI assisted. This thing says it wasn't AI assisted. I know I used an agent. Maybe they can reply to that and say, well, actually, I did use an agent. My agent didn't read the agent's MD file, so or something. But again, explicit over implicit, because at least that way everyone is well informed, everyone is clear on what's been happening and where the different levels of responsibility lie.
Hi, thanks for the talk. What do you think about the inclusion of adding the prompt to the contribution pull request that creates that assisted work?
I think that it makes sense, but I don't think it's as nuanced as that. So in my own work with it, I usually start with a 1 or 2 line prompt. It's not much of a prompt. It's literally have a look at the issue. The issue is more the prompt than anything else. But yes, some people do craft a quite detailed prompt. Maybe that's a good thing. At the same time, you can take one prompt and throw it at the AI model 7 times and get 7 different results. So I think the prompt has some value, but the entire process is far more valuable than just the prompt itself. Unless we get to a point where we're just throwing one prompt at it, it does some stuff, and we get a result, and it's fairly deterministic. Then I think that would have probably a little bit more value.
Maybe to add to that whole prompt committing thing. So if I just take it as an example, my usage of Claude, when I started using it, it felt like I had a junior there, and I kept on correcting it. And I said, yeah, we'll write that down. I'm using SpecKit, if you guys know that. So it's writing down and it's learning and it's getting better and better and better. So if I now sort of like tell him to do something, it just does it and it's just spot on. But the value of the prompt doesn't help much if I'm not committing the entire context that it's using.
Yeah.
And well, admittedly, I don't want to have the context in every commit.
Yeah. That also increases the token count and everything else that now the LLMs then have to process too. So yeah, again, trade-offs, I think, with everything.
Hi, is there a plan for the GitLab Duo agent that is doing the review on the MR to also approve the review, the MR before actually handing it over to an internal human maintainer?
Not that I'm currently aware of. So our process is still very much human in the loop, and I don't see any signs of that changing anytime soon. And for those that don't know, for every community contribution we get in, has a 2-layer review process. For every field that request covers, it requires a reviewer and a maintainer review. So we always like to coach people to keep their changes small. So if it's just database, you only get a database maintainer and a reviewer. But if it's database backend and front end, you're going to get 6 reviewers. And especially if it touches certain bits of code, you might pick up another reviewer that's a subject matter expert. So big reviews take time, slows everyone down, and just makes the whole process uncomfortable. Gerardo, I think you pretty much learned how to keep your changes really small, etc. But yeah, I don't see that Duo layer replacing any of those anytime soon. But what it can do at least is accelerate those layers so that the first reviewer, by the time they get there, there's already been a round of Duo review so that they know that some of the codified steps have been followed and have been checked out.
Thank you very much, Raimund.
Thank you.